You're grinding in the gym 4, maybe 5 times a week. You're sore, you're tired, you're putting in the work, but when you look in the mirror, it's like nothing's changed. Meanwhile, some guy who barely looks like he's trying is walking around looking like he's carved out of stone. So what gives? Here's the truth. It's not about working harder. It's not about spending more time in the gym. And it's definitely not about some magic supplement or secret workout split. The problem is simpler than you think, but fixing it requires you to understand something most people in your gym have no clue about. Building muscle isn't complicated, but it is specific. And if you're missing even one of these key pieces, you're basically spinning your wheels, wondering why your arms still look the same as they did 3 months ago. But here's the good news. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what's holding you back and how to fix it. Let's get into it. We need to talk about what actually makes your muscles grow in the first place. Because if you don't understand the mechanism, you're just guessing. Here's what most people get wrong. They think muscle growth is about feeling the burn, chasing the pump, or destroying yourself until you can't walk out of the gym. Those things might feel productive, but feeling like you worked isn't the same as actually triggering growth. Muscle grows in response to one thing above everything else. Mechanical tension, that's the primary driver. Not the pump, not the soreness. It's about putting your muscles under significant load and forcing them to produce force against resistance. Everything else is just side effects. So, if your entire training strategy is built around chasing a pump or feeling sore the next day, you're optimizing for the wrong thing. And that's exactly why you're not seeing results. Once you understand that mechanical tension is king, the question becomes, how do you maximize it? Because knowing what builds muscle and actually structuring your training to do it are two very different things. So let's break down exactly how to fix your workouts. Let's start with something that's going to sound counterintuitive. You don't need to train to complete failure every set. In fact, if you are, you're probably leaving gains on the table. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, I thought I had to go all out, push until I literally can't do another rep. That's what intensity means, right? Wrong. Here's what the research shows. Training to about 1 to 2 reps in reserve produces basically the same muscle growth as grinding yourself into the ground every set. Same gains, less fatigue, less risk of injury, less chance of your form falling apart. Because here's the problem with true failure. You might get more tension on that very last rep, the one where you're shaking like a leaf. But what happens next? You're so fried that your next set suffers. Your recovery takes longer, and over the course of a week, you're actually doing less quality work than if you just stopped a rep or 2 short. So here's the play. Stop when you've got 1, maybe 2 solid reps left in the tank. You should be working hard, but not so hard that you're compromising the next set or turning every workout into a war of attrition. All right, so you're training hard, but smart. You're stopping 1 to 2 reps, short of failure, keeping quality high. That's a solid start. But if you're not doing this, I don't care how hard you're training. Progressive overload. You've heard it before. Do more over time. Add weight. Add reps. Simple, right? So why is almost nobody doing it? Here's the deal. If you're lifting the same weight for the same reps today that you were 3 months ago, you're not building muscle. Muscle growth is your body's response to a demand it can't currently handle. So if the demand never increases, why would your body change? But here's where people mess this up. They think progressive overload means slapping on an extra plate every week. Then their form goes to hell. They start using momentum, and suddenly they're not even training the muscle anymore. Real progressive overload is smarter than that. Add 1 rep, add 10 pounds to the bar. Tiny changes. But when you stack them week after week, that's when the magic happens. Write down what you're lifting. Track your sets, your reps, your weight, and every week ask yourself, did I do more than last time? If the answer is no, you're not progressing, and if you're not progressing, you're not growing. Okay, so you're training smart. You're progressively overloading every week. You're tracking your lifts and watching those numbers climb. That's huge. But there's still a piece missing: volume. You don't need to do 20 sets per muscle group to grow. In fact, chasing crazy volume is a waste of time and energy. There's this idea that more is always better. More sets, more reps, more time in the gym. And sure, volume matters. But here's what matters more. Load. Actual weight on the bar. Because remember what we talked about? Mechanical tension is the primary driver of muscle growth. And you know what creates the most mechanical tension? Heavy weight. Not pumping out sets of lightweight for high reps until your muscles are screaming. Here's what the research shows. Heavier loads, even with less total volume, are more efficient at producing muscle growth than lighter weights with sky-high volume. Why? Because when you're lifting heavier, your muscle fibers are working harder to produce force. That's tension. That's the signal your body needs to grow. Now, I'm not saying you should only do singles like a power lifter, but if you're doing sets of 20 on everything, you're doing it wrong. Most of your work should be in that 6 to 12 rep range, heavy enough that it's challenging and creating real tension, but not so heavy that your form breaks down. You can get better results with fewer sets because each set is actually productive. So stop counting volume like it's a competition. Start focusing on quality tension and watch what happens. Alright, so now you're training with the right intensity. You're using heavier loads that actually create tension. You're being efficient with your volume. You're on the right track. Now we need to talk about technique. This is the foundation everything else is built on, and if yours is trash, none of the other stuff matters. Here's what happens when your form breaks down. The tension shifts away from the muscle you're trying to target and onto your joints, your momentum, everything except what you're actually trying to grow. You might be moving weight, but you're not creating tension. And without tension, there's no growth. Control the weight. Feel the muscle work. Don't use your lower back to curl a barbell or bounce the bar off your chest because the weight's too heavy. If you can't control it through a full range of motion, the weight's too heavy. Drop it down. Nail the technique. Control beats ego. Now we've covered a lot, but there's one final piece to the puzzle. Consistency. I know, you've heard it 1,000 times. Just be consistent, bro. But here's why most people fail at it. They think consistency means showing up every single day, never taking a break because rest days are for the weak. That's not consistency. That's stupidity. Real consistency isn't about how many days in a row you can train. It's about showing up week after week, month after month, and actually recovering so you can progress. Because here's the thing, muscle doesn't grow in the gym. It grows when you're resting. If you're training 6-7 days a week and wondering why you're not growing, it's because you're not giving your body the chance to actually adapt. And eventually you hit a wall. You might even start going backwards. So here's what real consistency looks like. Training 3 to 5 times a week, sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night, eating enough protein to fuel recovery and growth, and most importantly, sticking to this for months. Just steady, boring, unglamorous consistency. Do that for 6 months and I promise you, your physique will be unrecognizable. But if you're constantly stopping and starting, switching things up, never giving your body time to adapt, you'll look the same next year as you do right now. Look, building muscle isn't some mystery. It's about understanding what actually drives growth and structuring your training around it. Mechanical tension through heavier loads, progressive overload that's tracked, training hard but smart, 1 to 2 reps from failure, staying consistent with your training and recovery, and executing every rep with control. Get those things right and the results will come. Now, if this video helped you, hit that subscribe button because I've got more content coming on how to actually build muscle without the BS. Now get out there and put in the work.